Eric betrays Katie. Shocking power move destroys her trust forever. And the spangling, high-stakes world of the bold and the beautiful, treason is virtually woven into the fabric of every couture gown and rumored boardroom alliance, but nothing could have prepared observers for the emotional earthquake that hit when Eric Forrester made a power move that shattered Katie Logan's trust ever. It wasn't loud at first. It wasn't explosive. It began with a quiet meeting behind unrestricted doors at Forrester Creations, an advised decision made with steady hands and eyes fixed on heritage rather than love. Yet by the time the dust settled, the fallout would leave Katie questioning not only her place in the company, but her entire history with the man she formerly trusted as both tutor and family. Katie Logan had always believed that beneath the commercial Goliath surface, Eric Forrester was guided by heart. For times, she saw him as the moral compass of the Forrester dynasty, the primogenitor who balanced ambition with compassion. Indeed, when battles between Brooke and Taylor erupted, or when Ridge and Thorne disaccorded over creative control, Eric sounded to stand above it all. So when Katie poured her energy into rebuilding her fashion adventure under the Forrester marquee, she did so believing she had Eric's unvarying support. He'd praised her vision, respected her adaptability, and promised her autonomy. But pledges in Los Angeles are fragile effects, especially when power and heritage are at stake. The trouble began when whispers circulated that the company was facing internal insecurity. Gains from the couture line were steady, but a new threat-heavy global expansion plan had investors nervous. Katie had supported for caution, prompting Eric to stabilize domestic operations before launching a high-profile European flagship. She presented data, protrusions, indeed sincere prayers about guarding the workers who depended on them. Eric heated, calm, reflective, but his silence concealed a different docket. He believed boldness defined the Forrester name. Retreat in his mind was weakness. Behind Katie's back, Eric convened a late-night strategy session with Ridge and Steffi. They bandied restructuring leadership, consolidating divisions, and polarizing creative authority. Katie's independent branch, though promising, was supposed expendable in the short term. It was a business computation. Clean, clinical, ruinous. Eric induced himself it was necessary for the survival of the brand. What he didn't anticipate was the particular desolation it would unleash. The treason came to light during what Katie allowed was a routine board donation. She arrived confident, set to unveil her rearmost collection inspired by sustainable fineness, a line she believed embodied ultramodern strength and complication. Rather, Eric intruded hermit sentence. His voice, steady but distant, blazoned that effective incontinently, her division would be absorbed into the main couture house under Ridge's direction. Decision perfected. No previous discussion. No vote from her. Just a protestation. The room fell silent. Katie's face drained of color as the reality sank in. This wasn't just a strategic shift, it was a public dismantling of her authority. Every superintendent, every adjunct, every intern witnessed it. The demotion burned deeper than wrathfulness. She managed to ask one question. When were you planning to tell me? Eric's aspect softened, but he offered no reason. I'm telling you now. In that moment, commodity inside Katie fractured. Trust, formerly cracked, infrequently mends seamlessly. She had defended Eric numerous times. Through health scares, family feuds, indeed romantic mistakes. She believed in his vision because she believed in his integrity. Now she saw a different verity. Eric valued the company's heritage above the people who carried it forward. The battle that followed in Eric's office was raw and undressed. Katie indicted him of undervaluing her, of viewing her as a temporary slavey rather than an able leader. Eric combated that leadership occasionally needed painful choices. He claimed it wasn't particular, but for Katie it was entirely particular. Businesses can restructure. Connections deteriorate. News of the treason gurgled through the Forrester family. Brooke, fiercely defensive of her family, brazened Eric with fiery outrage. Ridge tried to intervene, arguing that connection was logical given request pressures. Steffi, realistic as ever, defended her forefather's right to steer the company as he saw fit. The family divided along familiar fault lines: fidelity versus ambition, heart versus strategy. But the true desolation unfolded intimately. Katie sat alone in her office, soon to be someone additional's girdled by sketches, fabric tapes, and framed prints marking her trip. Each point was a memorial of trust placed and trust broken. She replayed every encouraging word Eric had ever spoken. Were they sincere? Or simply accessible? The mistrustfulness cut deeper than the reduction. Bill Spencer, ever attuned to Katie's emotional shifts, tasted the storm brewing. Though their romantic history was complicated, his instinct to cover her burned. He saw occasion where she saw treason. "You don't need them," he told her. "Start your own conglomerate. Let them see what they lost." Bill's offer tempted her, not out of vengeance but out of reclaiming autonomy. Meanwhile, Eric grappled with his own fermentation. Alone in the design plant late at night, he questioned whether he'd misestimated. He flashed back Katie's passion, her inexhaustible fidelity. He hadn't meant to wound her. He'd meant to secure the future. Yet leadership without empathy is concave. The consummation dallied like a shadow across his drafting table. As days passed, Katie's address shifted from hurt to resolve. She attended meetings, fulfilled transitional duties, but her warmth toward Eric cooled into professionalism. No more casual confidences. No more participated horse laugh. When he tried to explain further, she heeded politely but distantly. The trust that formerly colored their relations was gone, replaced by conservative detachment. The ultimate rupture came when Katie blazoned her abdication. She refused to remain an emblematic statuette under Ridge's oversight. Her speech to the staff was poised yet poignant. She thanked them for their fidelity and subtly conceded the pain of change. Eric watched from the reverse, pride and remorse warring within him. He'd won the power struggle but lost commodity impalpable and irreplaceable. Outside the Forrester structure, Los Angeles business roared indifferent to particular heartache. Katie stepped into the sun uncertain yet liberated. Treason had stripped her of comfort, but it had also stripped down vision. She now saw the commercial world with sharper clarity. Trust must be earned continuously, not assumed indefinitely. Eric's power move achieved its immediate ideal. Investors saluted the decisive restructuring. Stock prices ticked overhead. Assiduity magazines praised his bold leadership. Yet at family feasts, an unnoticeable pressure floated. Katie's seat at the table remained, but the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Exchanges were measured. Ganders guarded. In the grand tradition of the bold and the beautiful, this treason wa'n't fade still. It sets the stage for shifting alliances, new battles and maybe indeed redemption bends. Will Eric essay to mend what he broke? Will Katie conduct her pain into erecting a rival conglomerate that challenges Forrester's dominance? Or will the fracture widen, pulling other family members into its widening crack? What remains inarguable is this Eric's shocking power move destroyed further than Katie's professional standing. It disassembled a foundation of trust times in the timber. And in a world where fidelity is currency, that loss may prove premium than any fiscal threat he sought to avoid. The fate of Eric Forrester's treason of Katie Logan unfolded like a slow-burning campfire, consuming every precisely constructed subcast of trust, affection, and domestic fidelity, leaving scorched remnants of a relationship that formerly sounded unshakable and exposing vulnerabilities that no boardroom power play could ever justify. For Katie set up herself wandering the halls of Forrester Creations with a blend of unbelief, wrathfulness, and heartache, recalling all the moments. She had believed in Eric, not just as the primogenitor of the Forrester conglomerate, but as a man who had constantly supported her bents, celebrated her adaptability in the face of lapses, and honored her creative genius in a way many others ever had. And yet, as she walked past the opulent displays of fabric tapes, mannequins draped in her designs, and the shimmering awards that commemorated times of fidelity and art, she realized with a bitter clarity that all of that had been a fragile vision, a temporary alignment of ambition and goodwill, now cancelled by Eric's unilateral decision to consolidate power, claiming that it was for the good of the company. Indeed, as it totally cancelled her influence, undermined her professional identity, and intimately lowered her in front of the very people she had guided and inspired. And as her heart pounded with the weight of treason, the room sounded to shrink around her, the walls echoing with the echoes of exchanges and horselaugh that now sounded concave, filled with the faint, mocking memory of Eric's formerly comforting words that had now converted into a dagger ringing in her sense of fidelity and anticipation. For Katie knew that in the ruthless cotillion of high fashion and family politics, Eric's intentions, no matter how strategically sound, had left an unforgettable scar, and she felt a profound sense of insulation as she recalled the trust she had placed in him over decades, the innumerous times she had defended his opinions, shielded his character, and indeed overlooked setbacks in judgment because she believed in the integrity of the man she knew. And yet, in that defining moment when he disassembled her division without so important as a previous discussion, or a participated plan, the stark reality had come. Inarguable Eric had prioritized the Forrester heritage and commercial ascendance over the emotional bonds and collective respect that had anchored their relationship, and the treason was compounded by the fact that it wasn't only professional but profoundly particular, cutting deep into Katie's identity, leaving her questioning her own judgment, her part in the family, and whether she had ever truly understood the man who had formerly been her guiding light. And as she wandered further through the design workrooms, she observed the staff's responses, some sympathetic, some silent, some calculating, the subtle shift in dynamics that accompanied the dismantling of her authority, the quiet whispers of fidelity torn between admiration for her adaptability and fear of disaffecting Eric or Ridge, and every regard and hushed word came a memorial of the insulation she now faced in a world that had preliminarily felt cooperative and probative. And Katie's mind replayed the critical meeting where Eric had made his advertisement, the calm perfection with which he conveyed the decision as if it were a surgical procedure, devoid of empathy, yet justified as necessary for the lesser good. And she couldn't forget the sinking feeling in her stomach, the rush of outrage, and the sting of demotion as the room had inclusively absorbed the shock, and she had felt the cold aspect of Ridge, the composed but quietly approving nod of Steffi, and the implied pressure that radiated from Brooke as she watched her family's authority and benefactions be so intimately negated. And as she left the room, the rumored congratulations for Eric from the board members only boosted the sense of treason, for it came sorrowfully clear that fidelity, respect, and trust were secondary to ambition and perception in the eyes of those who held power in the Forrester conglomerate. And Katie's inner fermentation was aggravated by the consummation that her creative vision, painstakingly nurtured over times, was now subject to the vagrancies of others who may not partake her passion, her norms or her fidelity to quality, and yet, indeed in the depths of her heartache, there coddled a flicker of determination, a quiet turndown to allow this act of treason to define her or her heritage, for Katie knew that adaptability was a hallmark of her character, forged through times of navigating family politics, romantic snares, and commercial conspiracy, and she began to contemplate paths forward, importing the bitter reality of abdication against the tantalizing possibility of reclaiming autonomy, rebuilding her conglomerate singly and demonstrating to Eric, Ridge, and the world that her gift and leadership weren't contingent upon the blessing of a man who had so carelessly undermined her. And as she considered these possibilities, she also reflected on the broader counteraccusations for the Forrester family, fating that Eric's conduct had created crevices that would inescapably ripple outward, straining alliances, inflaming battles, and reshaping the family's power dynamics in changeable ways. And she allowed of Brooke, whose defensive instincts and fierce fidelity would be tested as she navigated the ethical and emotional fallout, and of Ridge, whose ambition might now feel validated yet tainted by the moral nebulosity of his forefathers' choices, and of Steffi, whose pragmatism and constancy to family strategy could potentially exploit the situation for professional gain, all while Katie scuffled with the pressure between particular exculpation and domestic cohesion, knowing that any misstep could consolidate the ocean between her and the people she had loved and trusted. And as she contemplated the strategic options available to her, including the possibility of launching an independent fashion line or aligning with influential assiduity numbers like Bill Spencer to produce influence, she also conceded the emotional cost of similar pushes, the threat of farther disaffection, and the need to navigate the delicate balance between ambition and integrity, for in the world of the bold and the beautiful, every choice carried the weight of consequences that could resonate through connections, careers, and reports, and Katie's internal dialogue came a gauntlet in which wrathfulness, sadness, resoluteness, and strategic thinking collided, forging a complex design for her coming way, a design that demanded courage, adaptability, and unyielding tone mindfulness, and in this gauntlet, she set up the seeds of commission, fating that treason, though profoundly painful, also presents the occasion for metamorphosis, for reinvention, and for the assertion of agency in a world where control is frequently transitory. And as the days unfolded, Katie began to apply her plan with scrupulous care, meeting discreetly with trusted associates, exploring implicit hookups, and cultivating her particular brand as a creative force untethered from the Forrester scale. And while Eric continued to navigate the functional connection he supposed necessary, Katie still erected instigation. Her presence felt not only through her designs but also through the fidelity she inspired in those who admired gift, integrity, and vision over bare propinquity to power. And the pressure between them came a slow-burning narrative that drew in spectators, challengers, and family members likewise, each with their own provocations, dockets, and emotional stakes. And as Eric sometimes caught casts of Katie's growing influence and independence, a yet mixture of remorse, pride, and apprehension stirred within him, for he realized that in the pursuit of commercial dominance, he'd undervalued the adaptability and imagination of a woman whose fidelity and passion couldn't be fluently suppressed. And the broader Forrester community, from directors to contrivers to assiduity interposers, watched with seductiveness and enterprise, fating that this particular and professional rupture was further than a simple power shift. It was a paradigm-altering event that would shape the unborn line of the company, the family, and the integrated particular connections that had long defined the Forrester heritage. And amidst this whirlpool, Katie set up moments of soul-searching, reflecting on her own values, the assignments learned from the treason, and the renewed commitment to authenticity, creative excellence, and exacting integrity. And as she stood in her private plant late one evening, girdled by sketches, fabrics, and designs, invested with her spirit, she understood that while Eric had exercised power in a way that undermined her trust, he couldn't extinguish the substance of who she was, nor could he mandate the course of her creativity. And with each decision she made, each strategy she executed, and each alliance she forged, Katie reclaimed not just her professional standing, but her identity, her autonomy, and the quiet, insuperable confidence that had always driven her. And as weeks turned into months, the interplay of ambition, fidelity, and particular agency continued to unfold in unanticipated ways, drawing in familiar faces like Brooke, Ridge, and Steffi, as well as abettors from outside the immediate family sphere. And each commerce, battle, and collaboration concentrated fresh complexity onto the narrative, creating a rich shade of pressure, conspiracy, and emotional depth. And through it all, the specter of Eric's treason remained a criterion, a memorial of the fragile crossroad of power and trust. And as Katie navigated the preceding challenges with grace, strategy, and resoluteness, she converted a moment of ruinous particular loss into a catalyst for reinvention, demonstrating that while treason may wound, it can also illuminate the path to renewed purpose, influence, and creative triumph. And in this ongoing saga of ambition, fidelity, and adaptability, the bold and the beautiful continue to explore the intricate, high-stakes interplay of family, power, and love, with Katie Logan standing at the center, a testament to the enduring strength of character, the energy of perseverance, and the transformative power of turning treason into occasion, while Eric Forrester, for all his strategic wit and commercial sapience, was left to reckon with the enduring consequences of a decision that had secured authority but strained the bonds that had formerly defined both family and heritage. And in this ever-evolving story, every regard, every rumored word, and every calculated initiative continued to resonate, shaping fates, challenging commitment, and icing that in the glamorous, Machiavellian, and emotionally charged world of Los Angeles fashion, the echoes of treason would reverberate long after the original act, leaving unforgettable marks on the hearts, minds, and intentions of all involved. And as the sun set over the megacity, casting a golden gleam on the Forrester headquarters, it illuminated not just the opulent structures of power, but the intricate mortal dramatizations contained within, reminding observers that in a world where beauty, ambition, and influence collide, trust is both fragile and inestimable, and the consequences of its breach are felt far beyond the moment of treason itself, splashing through careers, families, and the very soul of those who dare to conjure, love, and produce, with Katie Logan standing resolute, converted, and ready to navigate the ever-shifting geography, with courage, imagination, and unwavering determination, icing that while Eric's shocking power move may have destroyed trust ever, it also burned a story of commission, adaptability, and the enduring pursuit of particular and professional fulfillment that would allure cult, shape unborn alliances, and define a new period for both her and the Forrester heritage in ways that were as changeable as they were ineluctable. a testament to the drama, conspiracy, and mortal complexity that has always made The Bold and the Beautiful an iconic and compelling narrative of ambition, love, and the consequences of choices made in pursuit of power. And as Katie took her first way toward reclaiming her creative conglomerate, the world watched, charmed by the unfolding saga of treason, redemption, and reinvention, knowing that in the unpredictable, glamorous, and emotionally charged macrocosm of The Bold and the Beautiful, every act, every decision, and every relationship carries the weight of consequence, and that indeed in the shadow of desolation, the mortal spirit can endure, acclimatize, and crop stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever ahead.